Well, for anyone that doesn't know you, do you want to just introduce yourself and your
Well,
book?
I am Graham Buzz Bidstrup, this guy, and I've played drums in lots of bands, and I produced records, and I managed Uncle Jimmy Little for the last 13 years of his life, and I run a charity in his name.
Amazing.
That's me.
And you've got a memoir called No Secrets,
Yeah.
and it's basically you telling your life story in a vulnerable way. So do you feel like there were certain things that were hard to talk about, or do you feel like in writing that it was kind of a relief in a way?
It was kind of a relief. I started writing it just to talk to my family, really. Just, I get young cousins or nephews and nieces, and they say, somebody said you played on this record, or you did this, or you did that. So I just thought I'd write it all down while I could remember it. And then I showed it to a couple of published authors, and they went, you should make that into a manuscript, we'll help you do it. So yeah, it's been, cathartic, as they would say, because I've gone through stuff that at the time was quite hard to deal with. I've had a couple of situations where, you do a lot of work for people and you help get something built from zero up to there, and then when the money comes in, they just go, well, see you later, bye-bye. It's been fun, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was good though. I enjoyed it, and there's some stuff that's not in there because I had to run it past some lawyers.
That's fair enough, yeah. And as you mentioned, you've done like a lot of awesome things over your career. So when writing this book and reflecting on your life, like what would younger you think about like the life that you've led so far?
I think younger me would go, you actually did it, because I thought about this probably from the time I was 9, I reckon. From the time I realised that music was actually something that was really powerful. And when I started playing drums, but I also played guitar and I played piano. So I was always going to do something in music. So my younger me would go, well done, you did it, you got there. Yeah.
And at the time you started music, like there's probably a lot more challenges than what people face now in terms of getting out there and finding people. So what are some challenges that maybe modern day musicians may not realise that you went through?
Well, I was in the golden period. You see, I'm old, right? I'm about to turn 74. So I started in 1966, right? And I was 14, and I played in a band where the guys were 18 and 20. They were older than me. And 2 of them came from Liverpool, and 1 of them came from Manchester in England. And I just got this little armchair ride into, I guess, playing in a band. But also, I came from Adelaide. At the time, there were 15, if you've been to Adelaide, there's North Terrace, West Terrace, East Terrace, South Terrace. There's a square mile. There were 15 gigs there. And you could go and play that gig for half an hour, that gig for half an hour, that one for half an hour. Yeah. And then you could go out to Elizabeth or Salisbury or somewhere else, So there were gigs everywhere. Like I was playing 4 or 5 nights a week when I was 14.
Yeah.
And then I went through from that into the 70s, where in the Angels, for example, we were just touring constantly. So we had gigs, we could play. I could actually make a living out of playing, and that's something that kids today find really hard. I mean, I got a 36-year-old who's a producer, lived in America, done lots of great worked with some really good people. He finds it hard to make a living.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the challenges I had probably were more to do with my parents, because I was youngest of 4 kids, and they were all academic, and in the day, everyone had to go to university. You have to go to university, and I just didn't want to. I mean, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I just wanted to.
It's not for everyone. Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but I did. I got a degree in mechanical engineering, which I've never used. So it was kind of pointless in a way.
Yeah.
But again, back then university was free. You didn't have a HECS debt.
Yeah.
So lots of people just did university degrees for fun.
Yeah.
Which kind of I did.
Yeah. And so the title's called No Secrets, which is an Angels song, which you played in the Angels. And what I'm curious about is because you left because of money disputes, and that's such an important thing. So how do you balance your own values and your own ethics versus maybe the success and opportunities that came with being in that band?
That's a good question. So the book starts with me in New York, and the Angels in 1980 were the top band in Australia, like #1 band, right? We were playing everywhere, blah, blah, blah. We get to America and we're right at the bottom. And there's another 1,000 bands from all around the world that are doing exactly the same as us. So after about 6 months of traveling around America, making $20 a day per diem, and we had to pay to play everywhere we went, I guess, you know, I just sat down and one night with a friend of mine, and he'd come over from Australia and said, "How's it going, you know?" And I said, "Well, I'm making $20 a day, and every time that we do something, we take money from the record company. They give us money. It was a major record company, it was Epic, you know, which is now Sony. They'll give us $100,000, or they'll give us $50,000, or they'll give us all this money." And in 1980, we were $450,000 in debt, or in the red, and we worked out that we'd have to sell 4.5 million records before I'd make 1 cent.
Wow.
Because all of the paying back that $450,000 came out of the royalties for the music, not the songwriting. The songwriting royalties were sacrosanct. They weren't touched at all. So we had to sell 4.5 million records to pay it back.
Which is a lot.
Which is a lot, like a hell of a lot back then. And meanwhile, the songwriters would have made $1 million each. So I just went to them and I said, you know, I know there are other bands that have a royalty split where they split money back to the people who aren't writing a lot of songs. Now, I co-wrote that song, which was the most popular song the Angels had at the time. But, you know, there was a lot of other music we were playing that I wasn't a songwriter on. And I was quite happy to share my piece of that. But they said no. They said, no, we're never going to do that. And I just got on the bus the next day driving to Philadelphia, and I resigned. I just went. And the reason I resigned is that the friend that I was with did film music. He was a film music composer and a producer. He'd produced Mental as Anything and Flowers, who became Ice House, and blah, blah, blah. And he just said to me, I've got all these feature films to do, and I know that you play guitar and you play drums and you play keyboards and you're an engineer. Why don't you come and work with me? I'll pay you obscene amounts of money and we'll have lots of fun. What do you think? So I could just get onto that bus and just say, look, if you guys aren't going to come to the party, I know we have to spend another 3 years doing this. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. You know, and I'm not prepared to do that for another 3 years, making $20 a day. So I'm off. See you later.
Good on you for standing your ground.
That's it.
And did you ever have any regret looking back on that, or like?
Not one.
Amazing.
Not one regret. You know, that started another whole chapter of my life. You know, doing the film music, I did that for 3 years. I ended up doing a TV series for ABC called Sweet and Sour. I did other feature films. I started producing other bands, young bands. I'd produce, you know, albums for bands. I started writing. I did lots of session work. You know, it really was the best thing I'd done, and I kind of, you know, wished I'd done it a year earlier. But had I done it a year earlier, that song wouldn't have been on the Angels.
I think it's a really important point to make too, because a lot of musicians sometimes they do gigs for like exposure or things because they want the opportunities or they want what it might lead to later on. So how do you like, what advice do you have for people that may be struggling with that as well, balancing the opportunities versus like you need to get paid for what you do?
I reckon, and it's the same as it was right for us at the start too. You start locally, so if you can't pull 100 people to a gig in your hometown, what makes you think you're going to be able to pull 100 people in this other town or another one? You know what I mean? So you want to get to a point where you've got your little base and you get yourself match fit, and then you go out and do it. I know there's lots of bands, lots of artists who are much more successful overseas than they are in Australia. So, but that doesn't mean that everyone's going to be able to just go, we're going to start a band and tomorrow we're going to go and play in New York. Right? Some do, and some are very successful doing that. But you know, I think you've just got to make sure that you've got something that you know is saleable, and that's a really sensitive point, because some people, you know, some bands don't want to be, you know, they want to be hip. They don't want to be mainstream. But you don't have to sell out to be mainstream. You know, you can still be very hip and be mainstream. Mainstream as in the sense of where you're going to be in a situation where people will pay you what you're worth. and everyone's going to have to do a certain amount of, you know, in the back of the tour bus and lying on the, you know, on top of the gear,
Yeah.
you know, in the van and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think people have got to be maybe realistic about what is out there. And today it's a lot hard. It's harder than it ever was
Yeah.
to actually get that happening. So you have to take a few chances. Definitely got to take some chances. Chances. I don't know. You said tomato. Yeah.
You said that when you started writing this book, the initial idea was that, like, to have a conversation with like your loved ones and open up those conversations. So in writing this, were there any conversations that came through that maybe it was interesting in terms of like maybe someone else perceived the situation differently to you, or like it can be hard trying to remember every single thing that happened.
Exactly, and that's why history is his story. You know what I mean? And there's been 3 books written about the Angels.
Yeah.
All right, mine's the 3rd one, and the first one was written by the 2 brothers. One of them that I didn't get on with very well, the reason I left the band. And they said some stuff in that I went, nah, that's not right, you know, that's crap, you know, and some things that were distortedly untrue about other people in the band as well. So that was one thing to correct that, I guess. And the other, I guess, was to just put my point of view forward. I was lucky in the sense that I've got a good memory. I haven't had too many bad drug experiences, so I could remember stuff. But I also had lots of diaries because I was a producer and a manager. I didn't write about my personal feelings. I would write. I was in the studio. We recorded this. This is how much it cost. I used this equipment. You know, all of that kind of stuff. Which was really handy because as soon as I looked at those diaries, I could remember exactly what I was doing and what I was feeling. Yeah.
Amazing. And you mentioned that you've also got a charity, so tell us a bit about that and how we can support.
Well, wonderful. Well, this fella that's on the back here, Jimmy Little, he was an amazing singer. I don't know if you remember anything about him. Yeah. Well, you remember Messenger, that album? I got asked in 1999 to look after that record, meaning the record company weren't too sure what was going to happen with it. They thought it might sell a couple of thousand copies, and Jimmy would play a couple of gigs to his old audience, which were basically leagues, clubs and stuff, right? Older people.
Yeah.
The record went nuts on Triple J. All of a sudden, all of the groovy people were trying to get a 62-year-old Indigenous man to come and play at their festival. Vivid Festival, Livid Festival, you know, whatever it might be. So I was asked to look after the record, which meant look after Jimmy. So when all of these things started coming up, I said to Jimmy, well, you know, they want you with the band. And he said, well, you know how to do that. You know, can you put a band together for me? So, you know, okay. So I'm playing drums, and I got my mates to come and play, and we went all around the world with him. We did the WOMAD circuit, and by the time we came back from that, you know, we went to London, we went to America, went to Singapore, went to Germany, got back to Australia, and I had the phone was just ringing hot. You know, we want him back, count, you know, and just when he got back, his kidneys failed, and that I just said to him, well, oh man, you know, well, it was great while it lasted. You should just, you know, take it easy. And he said, oh no, there's more to do.
Yeah.
And he chose to do peritoneal dialysis, which is a different type of dialysis. Most of it's hemodialysis is, you know, 3 days a week for 8 hours a day. Peritoneal is this little thing in your cavity, and you put a thing, and it means that you do it 4 times a day, right? And he just said, I'm going to do that because then I can keep traveling. And I thought, okay. And the travelling that we were doing, because he was such a famous man, we were going to all of these communities because they all wanted Jimmy Little to come to their community. And I'd go there with him as his, you know, a sort of carer in a way, because he had kidney failure. And making sure that I had boxes of the fluid, you know, that he had to do to dialyse. But, you know, we'd sort of talk, we'd go into a community and I'd walk into a store and I'd see an old lettuce that you wouldn't feed to your rabbit, you know, and it's like $10. And some of the housing and other sort of things. And I'd say to him, "Was it always been like this in these communities?" He said, "Yeah, pretty much." And I went, "Oh, okay." And the more we talked about it, the more I could see that he really wanted to do something about it. He didn't quite know how to go about it, but he had me, so we had a guy that knew how to organise stuff. And one of the beautiful things was that we'd get to a community and the significant TOs or elders would come out to see him because he was such a famous man. And Jimmy would just turn to them and say, "Oh, this is my mate Buzz. This is my friend Buzz."
Yeah.
Not manager, not, you know what I mean? So I got immediately accepted as Jimmy's mate, which has held me an incredible, it just made my job as the CEO of this organisation so much easier to be able to engage with communities, and people know me and I know them. Unfortunately, a lot of them have passed away now. But, you know, it was all part of this getting into a whole scene that I knew nothing about. Like, I was a drummer in a rock band, or, you know, that kind of thing, and I produced records and stuff. But as soon as I got into that area, into the Indigenous world, I just started to flourish. I just went, man, this is, I can get into this, I can do something.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been 20 years of incredibly satisfying work. You know, it gets me up every morning. What can I do today? I still love making music. I still play in Gangajang, you know, I still make records and stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing that really turns me on is the work that I do for the foundation. Yeah.
And it sounds like a great cause. So how can people get involved and support the incredible work you're doing?
Well, they can look at www.thumbsup.org.au. And there's a donation page. If people sort of read what we do, they can see what we do and they go, "Oh, we'd like to donate something." Great. They can donate some money. They can donate time. They can donate. There's lots of different ways to be involved. But I think mainly they can see what we do.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people get it. Some people don't get it. And the ones that don't get it, I just ask them to think about a bit more about before they make comments about, you know, the state of Aboriginal politics, perhaps, and just have a look at what's happening and just think about it before you make, you know, I guess statements that they will regret.
Yeah, I feel like if you don't get it, then maybe you shouldn't make a statement, because if you don't get it, you don't understand the full picture.
Exactly right. I put up a post the other night. I was at Mindle Markets, and my friends Warringah band were playing there from Milingimbi, and there was this old fella dancing. And, you know, and he was so cool.
Yeah.
You know, and he did this little thing and got the very end, kabang, you know, perfectly timed. And I just put this thing, and I said, this guy's got it, you know. And I spent this morning getting rid of like 20, 30 crappy remarks from people. "Oh, too many BBs, you know, Centrelink shuffle." And you just go, no. The guy was actually he's a painter, and he's a dancer, and he's a lawman. Yeah, he looked a bit scrappy, but, you know, everyone can look a bit scrappy sometimes. Yeah.
So, like, you've got a massive career that's spanned from, like, you know, performing, managing artists, doing your charities. So, like, where do you go to from here? Like, what are your future plans? Like, how do you,
Okay, well, like I said, I'm nearly 74. Next week I'll be 74. I didn't think I would be working when I'm 74.
Yeah.
But I feel as energetic and you know, ready to do stuff as I ever have. So as long as my wife is happy for me to keep doing it, which she is, I'll just keep doing this. I'll keep doing this till I fall over, I think.
Yeah.
But I've got a beautiful lady called Shelley Morris, who you probably know.
Yeah.
She's one of our directors, has been for quite a few years. She's also been part of this whole process of doing things out in community for the last 15 years. Yeah. And she's come on board as a deputy CEO, and I'm going to mentor her into my role.
Amazing.
So that when I get to the point where I can't do it anymore, or you know, whatever, then I've got a beautiful person like Shelley who can take it over.
Shelley would be great for that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not only so passionate about what we've done for this, and for her people, and singing in language and writing
Yeah.
songs in language. So we just went to Uluru and 3 communities around there a couple of weeks ago, and we wrote like 6 songs, made 2 videos, with lots of bits of language in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's the right person for sure.
Incredible. And the last question is, what's the main thing that you hope people take away from reading No Secrets?
Okay, what's the main thing? That despite obstacles that keep getting put in your way, and sometimes people who don't treat you the way that they should, you can still get past it. You can still get through it, and find I never would have thought I would be a CEO of a non-for-profit charity, right? When I was a kid, but you just got to keep working at it, and I think this shows that I don't put shit on people in this. I sort of make comments when I think, little pointed comments.
Yeah.
But I think there's enough positivity in there that I think if people are just positive and you find your little way through, you find your path, and sometimes it's not the path that you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.